I think Lynn's arrow is large enough. If you can't see her arrow, please go to your ophthalmologist.
I had to make sure I could see it without my glasses.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to the south, to the Darom tonight, as the arrow is pointing. I was going to start with music, but decided not to. Last week, we went to the northern part of Israel, and this week, we're going to go south. As much as I like the northern part of Israel, because it has beautiful and diverse topography, the southern part of the country, in my opinion, has the most stunning views of any other part. Tonight, we'll touch on the southern part of Israel, and it's changed a great deal over history, especially in modern times. We'll visit cities, towns, kibbutzim, and natural wonders of the region. Slide. Oh, okay. Oh, you can see the little hole. If you're looking close enough, you can see little holes in the walls there. And if you hit the correct button somewhere up around here, there's an entrance into a cave. What we're looking at, we're going to start with a little geography just to get our bearings. In the southern part of Israel is the Judean desert, southeast of Jerusalem. And what we're looking at right now is Qumran. The eastern border with Jordan cuts through, and the eastern border of Jordan cuts through the Dead Sea and goes southward, slightly west down to the Gulf of Eilat. But I really like Qumran. It's the area where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. And I visited there with a friend of mine a couple of years ago. It's very interesting. I think you can see sort of a little cave,
This spot here.
that right there.
Can you guys see my cursor?
Yeah, when you there are little caves all over the place, and some of the people who, I didn't write this up, but that's right, I'll talk from some of the people who were escaping from Jerusalem were going down into the desert, who didn't make to Masada, went to Qumran. It was a mystical center. They were writing a bunch of stuff. They also were a little gaga over water, and they go to the mikveh about 8 times a day. They had a mikveh there. Supposedly, and I don't think there's any proof of it, John the Baptist passed through there and was a guest for a while. It gets a little, third slide. Gets a little fuzzy from here on in, since I pictured Jericho as part of the desert area in the Judean desert, but actually Jericho is technically northwest of Jerusalem and is currently administered by the Palestinian Authority, even though it's within Israeli borders. But I don't want to focus on Jericho because it really is an Arab town. Just south of Jerusalem is Ramat Rachel Kibbutz, which offers a kibbutz hotel experience for travelers. Ramat Rachel is referred to in Kings 2, chapter 11, verse 18, as having been a house of Baal. Now we're getting dicey. Yigal Yadin, a famous archaeologist who excavated Masada, dates a palace there, excavated by Yochanan Haroni, who's the head of archaeology at Tel Aviv University, to Atalia, One of the important artifacts discovered are numerous stamp impressions. Atalia was the daughter of King Ahab and Jezebel, of the Kingdom of Israel. And she was a worshiper of Baal and other pagan gods. However, she was the queen consort of the king of Judah as wife of King Jehoram, and a descendant of King David. So the two kingdoms kind of mixed. And later, when he died, she was queen regent from 841 to 835 BCE. Her birthplace was at Sebastia in Nablus, which is on the west bank, Shechem, known by us, and a very Arab city. Gave me the willies when we went through there. But she was the mother of King Ahaziah, the sixth king of Judah, and she was the only queen to rule as the sole monarch of Judah. The rest were kings. Okay, so Ramat Rachel has a kibbutz, but also an archaeological dig. And I believe the archaeological dig was done possibly by Yigal Yadin, but he also probably asked Yochanan Aharoni to help him excavate the palace area. Next slide, please. I was having so much fun with this. A little south of Ramat Rachel kibbutz, on the way to Bethlehem, or Bethlehem as it's known, is a holy site for Jews, Kever Rachel, or the tomb of Rachel, where Jacob buried his favored wife, Rachel. Many Jews come to this site to offer prayers for the ill, for people who are childless, and people in need of special blessings. Although it's on the way to Bethlehem in Palestinian-owned territory, Ramat Rachel is managed and maintained exclusively by the Ministry of Religious Affairs and the National Center for Holy Places. I was there once with a group. I would not recommend going without a group or without someone with a loaded rifle, because it is in a somewhat dangerous place, and the more people you have and somebody with a rifle is a good idea. Slide 5. Okay, let's give a tip to other religions here. Bethlehem is a very small town. It's basically inhabited today by mostly an Arab population, and was the birthplace of King David. What you're seeing right now obviously was not around during King David's time. It is also accepted as the birthplace of Jesus.
Who?
Him, yeah, Yeshu ben Yosef. There is a church and a chapel in the middle of town, and the current population is divided between Muslims and Orthodox Christians. It's visited by most Christian pilgrimage groups that come over, and there are quite a bit of them. I've been on a plane with a lot of them, and even some Jewish synagogue run groups will bring some Christians along with them and make a stop at Bethlehem. One time when my synagogue back east went to Israel, they brought along one of the women who helps out, who is a Baptist, and they took her to Bethlehem, and she was absolutely thrilled that they did that. Okay, Um, okay, next slide, please. Oh, yay. Now we're going to one of my favorite places in Israel. One of Joe's favorite places too, I think.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Mhm. Going back east to the Dead Sea and south is En Gedi. King David used En Gedi as a stronghold for his kingdom. It was originally an Amorite site, and the Oasis was a strategic place for David. The Oasis area was extremely important because that's where water was, and that's where David hid out from Saul when he was on the run. He got Saul a little bit angry at him. En Gedi is still a beautiful, beautiful site. The natural preserve there has swimmable pools of fresh water, a short hike up a hill, and it's very close to the Dead Sea. An entrance to the park at En Gedi, which is a national park in Israel, is right across the street from one of the beaches of the Dead Sea. I've been there several times, and the site is different at different times of day. I personally think the best time to go is early in the morning, as there are many native animals to be seen, including a Nubian ibex, which you can see. It's got the shofars on its head. And a rock hydrax, and they are so cute. But we saw both of them when we were entering the park. The ibexes were just running around, and the hydraxes were kind of gathered and kind of playing with each other, and they're so cute.
Sandy wanted a souvenir, and they wouldn't let her take one.
No, I couldn't take a hydrax back with me, but they're so cute. Much cuter than prairie dogs. The Oasis is fed by Nahal David, the spring of David, and the top pool has a beautiful waterfall. It's lots of fun to cool off, especially after the hike up the hill, in the pools of water and underneath the waterfall. You can sort of see there's an indentation there, and you can get behind the waterfall. It's so much fun. This is like my favorite part. This is where I got stuck in the presentation because I was having too much fun and I was feeling homesick. En Gedi is first mentioned, as I said before, in the book of Judges, because David hid out from King Saul there when King Saul was feeling a little jealous, we might say. Across the road, next slide. We're up to 7. Across the road from the nature preserve are some of the beaches of the Dead Sea. Today, scientists are worried about the lower levels of water in the Dead Sea, but it's still a beautiful spot. If you decide to take a dip in the water, you need to be sure you have no cuts on your body and do not put your head underwater. It is extremely salty, even more so than the ocean. And I've seen a bunch of kids who were being stupid and put their heads underwater and come up coughing.
Do not shave that morning.
Yeah, that morning.
Anywhere on your body.
Anywhere on your body. If you banged yourself and you have even the tiniest cut, it will sting like crazy. Next slide. The area around En Gedi can be explored in a day trip from Jerusalem, but I really feel that there's so much to see, it's worth at least an overnight in the area. Kibbutz En Gedi, where Joe and I stayed and where my friend Sue and I stayed with our kids, is a few kilometers down the road and is a great place to stay. It has a hostel like, sleep in beds and not very much else, style motel and a guest house, and a huge Israeli-style kibbutz breakfast
Oh, yeah.
is included in the price. Joe keeps talking. Joe still remembers it and talks about it.
And the dinner was amazing.
And the
too.
dinner was great too.
Size of a football field
Yeah.
of food.
The bus to other parts of Israel also stops at their main office building. The kibbutz will do a tour of the kibbutz free of charge. The other amazing thing to do on the kibbutz is visiting their mineral spa and soaking tubs, which are very relaxing. My friend Sue had to kind of drag me out of it. They're gorgeous. They're wonderful. And there's also an ancient synagogue which served worshipers between the 3rd and 6th century of the Common Era, which was discovered in the fields of Kibbutz En Gedi by one of the farmers in the 60s and was excavated in the 1970s. I didn't get there, but it looks really interesting. For an archaeology buff, namely me, it's great. Next slide. You're probably going to recognize next slide. Personally, I could spend at least 3 to 4 days in En Gedi, but there's so much more to see in the area. Very close to En Gedi is Masada, the mountainous fortress atop an isolated rock plateau. King Herod built 2 palaces there for himself on the top of Masada. After the fall of Jerusalem in the year 70 of the Common Era, Masada became the last real stand for the Jewish rebels. In 73 CE, not happy time, the 963 people still left at Masada took their own lives instead of submitting to slavery under the Romans. The Masada Excavation in 1963 was a boost for Israeli morale. Many IDF troops do their swearing-in ceremonies on top of Masada. Almost every Jewish tourist group goes to Masada, including youth groups, which try to climb it at dawn. And many B'nai Mitzvahs are done at the summit. Going up and down to the summit can be done by cable car, one way or both ways. However, many groups choose to walk at least one way on the snake path. There are guided tours around the ruins of Masada that run all day. I think it's a minimal price. Masada, having no shade, is obviously better visited early in the morning, and hikers on the snake path often start at dawn. And Masada remains a symbol of Jewish and Israeli independence. Okay. Next slide. Okay.
I added an extra label.
Oh, thank you. Lot's wife. We think she's still rather attractive. Yay, thank you, Lynn. That's Lynn's sense. Lynn has the same weird sense of humor I do, obviously. About 15 minutes south of Masada is a modern town and resort of Sodom, as in Sodom and Gomorrah. Ancient Sodom is first mentioned in Genesis chapter 19. It was destroyed along with Gomorrah, according to the Tanakh, by fire from the heaven for its wickedness of the people. According to Genesis, Lot, the nephew of Abraham, and his family fled the city, but Lot's wife looked back and was turned into a pillar of salt. On the road to Sodom are many salt pillars, any one of which the guides on your ship will tell you is Lot's wife. Near the modern town of Sodom, you can find resort hotels, gorgeous resort hotels. I didn't stay there, but my sons, when they went to Israel with their dad, stayed in one of the hotels in Ein Bokek on the Dead Sea. There are also less expensive options in the area. Oh, did we do slide
Next.
10B? Okay, that's a Marriott resort at Sedona. I did not stay there. I have never stayed in a place that expensive, but I know people who have, and it's gorgeous. You can see the Dead Sea off in the background, and the resort obviously has a gorgeous pool and hot tubs. Okay, next. Yay. Let's go on. Slightly outside of Sodom are the Dead Sea Works. In Hebrew, Mifalei Yam HaMelach. It is an Israeli potash plant. The business was founded in 1929 under British name, but is a chemical and mineral extraction business owned by Israel Chemicals. Its products are potash, bromine, and magnesium. Anyone wants any other information on potash, bromine, and magnesium, please ask the scientist in the room. Isaac, you can give a lecture on that whenever you like. I'm not a scientist. Next.
I'll pass for now.
Okay. One of the not so well publicized joint projects of Israel and Jordan is the Red to Dead Sea water conveyance plan, which involves building a pipeline that both the Red Sea and from the Red Sea to the Dead Sea, and pumping around 2,000 million cubic meters of water per year into the Dead Sea in an attempt to save it, because the levels have gone down. The level of the Jordan River has gone down. The level of the Kinneret, Kinneret has gone down, and that affects the whole waterway. So they're trying to save the Dead Sea so that it doesn't dry up into a pile of salt. And Jordan and Israel are working together because the border is between Jordan and Israel, runs directly through the Dead Sea. So it affects Jordan as well as Israel. And it's very nice to know that things like that are going on. In my opinion, the reason it's not publicized is that anything that is publicized between Israel and one of their Arab neighbors could be up for somebody coming in and trying to make trouble. Next. Why am I? Oh, yay. Dirty people. Before we leave the Dead Sea area of Israel, I want to mention one of the growing industries in the region. Most beaches along the Dead Sea have areas of mud that is very good for skincare. And many beauty products for the skin and hair are made from them. Last time I went to get my hair cut, which I believe was last week, I can't keep track of time anymore. My hairdresser who grew up in Arizona, who is not Jewish, was boasting of the products that she uses from the Dead Sea that she was putting on my hair. And she said, oh, they have great stuff there. And yes, I've been there, toured there, done that. Been not quite as dirty as those guys, but did get in the mud. The mud and other minerals found in the area are supposed to be great for your skin. And therefore, some come with a hefty price tag. But they claim to bring together natural healing properties of the Dead Sea and the science of modern skincare. The one I think is this one's manufactured in New York. They probably import the stuff and can sell it for cheaper.
Well, I found this one on Amazon. It was only $18.
Yeah, that's a steal.
But once I bought stuff in the mall for like 60.
Yeah, I've also bought stuff in the mall for 120 from some poor starving Israeli that was trying to make her way and then go home.
Right, I'm sure she was.
Yeah,
I fell for the same story.
yeah, probably the same mall. Well, Lynn and I are both from Philadelphia.
That's
Next
the
one.
secret, guys. I know 'em.
Okay, next. Next stop on our trip to the Dome will be at the bottom of Israel, the beautiful town or city of Eilat. It sits at the southern point of Israel currently on the Gulf of Eilat. Eilat is a resort beach town. I went out when my friend Sue and I went down there to get something, I think a drink or something like that, drink of water, I don't know. It was, and this guy standing outside the small store that evening described Eilat to me as a Miami Beach, but in Hebrew. I feel Eilat has a whole lot more connection to Jews than Miami Beach, even though there are a lot of Jews in Miami Beach.
Did you want to mention Summer Shack?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. It's on the next page. For a short time after the Six-Day War, Eilat was not the southernmost point in Israel. When we won the Sinai Peninsula during the War of 67, the border went all the way down to Sharm el-Sheikh on the Red Sea. The last time I was in Eilat with my son and my girlfriend Sue and her daughter Amy, I was able to do a cruise down the Gulf of Eilat, almost to the entrance of the Red Sea. We had to turn back right at about the Egyptian border because there were some hostilities and they didn't want to go too far down. Besides having beautiful beaches and gorgeous turquoise blue water, there are other things to do in Eilat. Okay, slide. Oh, that's
We go to the next one.
yeah.
We have lots of Eilat pictures.
Yeah, I kind of miss Eilat. I haven't taken Joe there yet, and he hasn't been. That's God willing next trip. There are lots of good restaurants in Eilat, and a good many of them are kosher. You have to check though. One of the other activities that I had the luck to do in Eilat, both times I was there, was taking a tour of the Coral Reefs in a beautiful glass bottom boat. You can see the coral. I like the fish that been managed to find. Last time I was there with my youngest son, Lenin, we went to a fairly new aquarium that starts at the shore level and goes under the water to actually see the native fish up close and personal without having to get wet. And I love the view from this aquarium because that view, you're actually under the Gulf. There's also excellent scuba and snorkeling. I never saw that many fish when I snorkeled, but I don't go that deep. Next slide. Okay, what you're looking at is not Sedona and not Utah. About 30 kilometers north of Eilat is the Timna Valley. The area is rich in copper ore and has been mined since the 5th millennia BCE. There is controversy over whether the mines were active during the biblical United Kingdom. They are sometimes called King Solomon's mines. Please excuse all the movies about them because that's Hollywood. Recent excavations reveal that the height of activity in the region dates to the 10th century BCE, and domination of the area during this period would have meant control of lucrative copper industry. It's speculated that that would have been King David's conquest of Edom and King Solomon's stash of great wealth. my favorite stone. Eilat stones have been mined at Timna mines. Obviously not made into a stone like that. That takes a lot of doing. And then they use them for jewelry. It's a green-blue heterogeneous mixture of several secondary copper minerals. Eilat stone is a national stone of Israel and also known as King Solomon's stone. I don't know where my Eilat stone jewelry is, but I hope I still have
I
it.
had another picture. Where is that?
Where'd the other picture go?
I don't know.
Oh, all right.
I guess we'll get to it.
Okay. Next one. Some of the mines are available for tours. I did go to one on one of my trips. And Eilat stone jewelry is available all over Israel. There's also a park with hiking trails near the mines. Oh,
Oh, is this one?
that's walking in the mines, and there's actually, and which I didn't realize because I've never been there. There's actually an artificial lake in the Timna Park. And I've never been there. I'm not sure if it's real recent, but it looks like they built an oasis, a man-made oasis. Maybe my next trip. Okay, I have been here. Going north through the Paran Desert, which into the southern Negev Desert. The area of the south of Israel is made up of several desert areas. There's an interesting stop at Mitzpeh Ramon. The small town is on the northern ridge at an elevation of 860 meters. I don't convert meters into feet, but it's pretty high up. Overlooking the world's largest erosion, known as Maktesh Ramon. The crater has breathtaking, almost unworldly views. When I was there, I looked and I said, I don't know where I am. This could be the moon for all I knew. And I'd love to get back there. I believe the town has some places to stay, and I think there might be a small kibbutz near there. Okay. A little north of Mitzpeh Ramon is kibbutz Sde Boker. It was the desert home of Israel's first prime minister, David Ben-Gurion. I've never visited there, but my research revealed that there is now a museum on the kibbutz. It includes a tour of Ben-Gurion's home and a good bit of memorabilia from his life. If you look at the bottom picture, we captured his bed on the kibbutz, some of his books, and of course Ben-Gurion, we think about him as being larger than life, but there are his bedroom slippers. There on the floor. Somehow they felt that was worthwhile showing. As I said before, there's an exhibit. There's a tour of his home and a good bit of memorabilia from his life. But there's also an exhibit on the challenges of building and living in the Negev desert. Sde Boker was one of the first places that they built in the desert. And in Israel, one of the sayings is, we'll make the desert bloom. Well, they did that.
That's
Okay. And the house you looked at was Ben-Gurion's home in the desert. Of course, his work took him to Jerusalem a lot, but when he could get home to the desert, he did. The town of Demona, only 35 kilometers west of the Dead Sea Works and 30 kilometers southeast of Beersheva, the third largest city in the Negev. The Shimon Peres Negev Nuclear Research Center, colloquially known as the Demona Reactor, is located 13 kilometers southeast of the city. There's an aerial view of the reactor and a view inside. Israel is or has nuclear potential and probably has some nuclear weapons, but they also make nuclear power. And it's this teeny tiny little reactor hidden out in the desert.
Next.
Next. Yulcham or Yulcham, depending on which site you look at, is northwest of Sde Boker and was established as Kfar Yulcham in 1951 as one of the first frontier development towns in Israel. People weren't going to the Negev, so they tried to get people to go there, and they convinced some people. It was named for the biblical city of the same name, and it's nearby the site of Tel Rahman, an ancient well. Until the 1990s, the majority of its residents came from North African communities, with a minority population from India and Persia. So it was a real development town with people coming from, not from European populations, but from Eastern populations. A good number of the community of Indian Jews from the 3 cities that they settled in India came to Israel once Israel became a state. Today, the majority of the community, 40% of it, is primarily still from North African descent, but they've also been joined by people from Europe and other Israelis and people from North America. I like this picture because it's not a real photograph, it's just basically, it looks like an artist's depiction of it. And I've never been to Yerucham, but it's also on my list. One of my favorite stops. At the northern edge of the Negev desert sits the largest city of the Negev, Beersheva. It is often referred to as the capital of the Negev. The first mention of Beersheva is in the book of Bereshit, chapter 21, verse 31. Hence, the place was called Beersheva, for there the 2 of them swore an oath. And in the narrative, Abraham Avinu makes an oath with Abimelech, the ruler of the area. Abraham dug a well at the spot, and Abimelech accepted his claim to the area after they basically argued a lot about it. Yitzchak Avinu also built an altar in Beersheva and dug a well there, finding water, very important for the desert. Beersheva can mean 7 wells. So they found water there, which is important, and that's why Isaac and Abraham settled there. But hold tight. The modern city of Beersheva is not the site of biblical Beersheva. We'll get back to that in a few minutes. When I first visited Beersheva on my Israel pilgrimage tour in 1965, was kind of a small town when I went back in 1970, the city was a bit larger, but still looked to a 21-year-old kid from New York like a one camel town. I mean, they literally had one camel. You went to the market and you could you could get on the camel and ride it around for a couple of minutes. Tourist trap. However, Beersheva has seen great growth in the past 50 years. Let's hope so. The Beersheva metropolitan area is the fourth largest in Israel with a population of more than 350,000 people. Beersheva is not on the agendas of many tourist groups to Israel and therefore somewhat off the beaten track destination. However, as I found out in my research, there are a number of interesting things to do there and several other reasons to visit the city. First, it's been the hub for bus travel from that part of the desert area to other areas in Israel. It's practically the only place where you can get on a bus and go other places because the other buses are local buses. It also has, in recent years, attracted a large English-speaking population of people who have made Aliyah to Israel. It boasts one of the Masorti congregations in Israel, but people who English is not their first language also make Aliyah there. Our own congregant, Jorge Velasco, who made Aliyah to Israel a little while ago, lives in Beersheva. I don't have a picture of Jorge or his apartment. Maybe for next time I do this, I can get one from him. In Beersheva, you can visit its old Turkish town, which is the only organized planned Ottoman city in the region. Beersheva, another factor for the growth of Beersheva is Ben Gurion University of the Negev, one of the premier universities in Israel now for science. The Turkish railway station and Bedouin market are also interesting places to go. I believe I was at the Bedouin market. The Bedouin market takes place on Thursdays. Gee whiz, market days on Thursdays. Interesting idea. I think maybe they got it from the Jews. Our market days were Mondays and Thursdays, which is why we read Torah those days. And it's been in existence since 1905 and sells authentic Bedouin wares from neighboring villages, as well as modern stalls where you can find anything that you would find in any other market or shuk in Israel. On the outskirts of Beersheva is the Israel Air Force Museum, worth visiting if you're interested in aviation. Industries related to science have also been attracted to Beersheva. Now we're going to take a little turn. I think this is the next slide.
Yeah.
I became fascinated with archaeology in college, but there were no courses given at my university. I longed to go back to Israel because the last time I was there was 1965 and it was past 67. So through the ZOA, the Zionist Organization of America, in America's Cleveland office, I was in Cleveland for college, I found a summer trip that involved a 2-week course in the study of archaeology at Tel Aviv University under Professor Aharoni, and a month working on a new dig at Tel Sheva. I was on the second summer of the dig under the head of archaeology at Tel Aviv University, Professor Aharoni. In the afternoons, he would give lectures on what the site represented, what was found there that day, and in the previous weeks. Although we slept in tents, it was still pretty hot, even by Arizona standards. We got up to work at like 5 in the morning, came down for breakfast at 7, back up at 7:30, worked till noon. And the lectures were at 4 o'clock in the structure that they built as a mess tent. This trip only made my love of archaeology grow. So I volunteered for 1 more week in my 3 weeks free time in Israel and went back to the dig. They took me in. I mean, free help is free help. Tel Sheva, as it's known, or Tel Beersheva, as it's called, is 5 kilometers east of the modern city. And as far as I know, was the original Beersheva from Abraham's time. What I didn't know, and I found this from my research, it is now designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site and contains ruins of a walled city from the Israeli monarchic period, as well as relics from the Roman period, when the settlement sprawled all the way to the modern town of Beersheva. When I was there, we were working on burnt areas, which we think might have been Roman conquest time, because there was a lot of burning. We found a couple of shards. Some people found bigger pieces that Aharoni was able to put back together into pieces of pottery that looked like containers holding oil or something like that. Best summer of my life. However, next slide. One of the things I learned in Israel about living in the desert, which prepared me for Arizona, was in the morning when you get up, make sure you shake your shoes out. Israeli scorpions are even more feisty, and from what I gather, more deadly than their Arizona cousins. We had 2 of our volunteers rush to the local hospitals with scorpion bites that summer. They all came back okay, but you learn to do that in the morning before you put your shoes on. Helpful in Arizona. Another town about a half an hour away from Beersheva is Telerad. In the 1970s, it was still a small development town with Jews from various places, but also a fair-sized Bedouin community. I believe it still has a fair-sized Bedouin community because when my friend Sue and I were trying to get a ride down to Eilat from kibbutz, from the kibbutz at En Gedi, we didn't want to pay for the bus fare, but some guy we'd met at the Dead Sea the day before was a Bedouin and had a cab and said he'd take us there and back. It was great. All we had to do was supply him with sunflower seeds because he ate them like snacks. But Telerad is another archaeological site that was excavated by a woman named Ruth Amiran, and also our professor Yochanan Aharoni, the same archaeologist who was in charge of Tel Sheva while I was there. I believe we visited the site in an afternoon because that was one of the things he was working on. The excavation was started in 1962 and continued for 18 seasons. Excuse me. Telerad is one of the most important archaeological sites in Israel because there was found remains from a fortified Canaanite city and fortresses from the time of the kings of Judah. It is so popular that the tour books recommend making reservations for tours because otherwise you're not going to get in. Okay.
Oh, there's the jewelry.
Oh, there's my jewelry. Yay. We knew we had more jewelry. There are two more places that I want to touch on tonight. The first is Sderot, a town very close to the border of Gaza. Okay, I promise not to be political, but you'll have to forgive me. This town has been continuously bombed by Gaza since Gaza became an independent country, and before that by Hamas. Kibbutz Nir Am, near the city of Sderot, has been shelled constantly over the last 10 years or more. The kibbutz now gathers spent casings and makes them into jewelry and art sculptures to be sold to support rebuilding. Unfortunately, there's a whole generation of children on the kibbutz who have slept in bomb shelters for most of their childhood. You can see some of the jewelry that's available from the kibbutz. If you look up kibbutz Sderot jewelry, you can buy stuff. Okay. The last stop on our tour tonight is Kibbutz Yad Mordechai. The kibbutz is just north of the Gazan border and was named for Mordechai Anilevich, one of the heroes and defenders of the Warsaw Ghetto. Unfortunately, he died on May 8, 1943, defending the ghetto from the attacking Nazis. The kibbutz is located just 10 kilometers south of Ashkelon. Hold off till next week for the city of Ashkelon on the Mediterranean coast, due north of Gaza. Kibbutz Yad Mordechai is just 4 kilometers north of Gaza. It represents the Jewish struggle to survive throughout the ages. It's one of the leading kibbutzim in the kibbutz tourism industry, which I just learned, and I've been there. I remember visiting the kibbutz on my trip in '65, and how I still have memories of that, because I have no idea where the pictures I took are. I think maybe they got thrown out with the rest of my mother's attic when she moved into a condo. I still have a memory of seeing the huge bronze statue of Mordechai Anilevich on the hill overlooking the kibbutz. However, what I do not recall is the Yad Mordechai Honey and Bee House, obviously a new thing. Apparently, they now have an on-kibbutz industry. On the kibbutz, you can also find the From Holocaust to Resurrection Museum Heritage Site. Which reconstructs the 1948 Tashkach battle and the Operation Baby Monument, where dozens of kibbutz children survived the War of Independence. Also, on the kibbutz can be found a museum, which I didn't get to, of the old kibbutz, a small art gallery called the Dana Art Gallery, and sculptures of farmers in the early days of the state. I'd love to go back there. What time is it? 5 of 8?
Yeah, that's the last slide, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna stop recording.
We'll share our trip to Ashkelon, just up the coast, for another night. I'm going to be going down the coastline of Israel next year